What's up, purposeful pokerists and self-discovery seekers? Welcome back to the Poker with a Purpose YouTube channel. It's been a minute, but here we are. We have an episode for you today on Alex Foxen. Now, he's universally acknowledged as one of the very best poker players in the world, yet Foxen made a $4.5 million mistake versus OC Monarch Katola, which resulted in Foxen being brutally outplayed, getting stacked, and losing a $12 million heads-up match versus a player he's supposed to be head and shoulders better than. And the correct answer was staring him dead in the face the entire time. So we'll dive into what happened, what the analysts of this hand got wrong, what Foxen's blind spot was, and what you can do in spots like these to avoid costly mistakes, trust yourself and your intuition, and make bullseye decisions. Thank you for watching. Please like, comment, share, subscribe to go deeper than poker. And without further ado, let's dive in.
Card is actually not that scary. It might look scary because you can see a full house, but the reason is that when Katola checks back the flop, he's unlikely to have many hands that can hit a boat. Like, for example, if he had pocket eights, pocket jacks, pocket kings, king jack, king eight, these hands will mainly bet the flop. So there really aren't that many hands that improve to full houses that trap the flop. Also, if you had a hand like ace king, that's, very high frequency going to bet the flop. So realistically, for him to have a boat, he has to have trapped the flop, or maybe had a hand like pocket aces that checked back. There's just not that many hands that actually have Foxen beat. And if Katola raises the river, he's mainly saying he has a boat and not a flush.
Calculations all over the place. Katola is unlikely to check back flop with a hand like that, and yet Poke pretty much right after says, oh, what a good check by him to check back flop with top two. And then afterwards, when the flush comes in and the boat comes in, it's kind of like they just try to justify, like, well, Foxen couldn't really know or can't really understand that Katola could have a boat in this place, in this spot. So it's all over the place. So to a viewer, it doesn't make sense.
This flop check, you could argue to bet, you should mainly bet, but it does make sense to occasionally check back. In some ways, this is actually a very intelligent check back by Aussie Katola.
It's a good check back. However, then he still can't have a boat, right? So what do I do in a similar spot against the player?
You have almost no full houses in this spot in the big blind, and that's why it makes this spot very tricky. Because I see people berating this call like, oh, this is a terrible call here. Your opponent has a full house. But you have to think about what full houses does Foxen have? Like, if I'm Katola and I have, let's say, queen 5 of diamonds, or even maybe 10-9 of diamonds, I can jam for value knowing my opponent can't have those really good hands.
There's no really simple and effective way to say, oh, this is how we handle this situation. It's kind of a lot of like, shit, well, that's a good play by him, and well, Foxen's kind of fucked here.
Yes. Basically, he's stuck between a rock and a hard place. Nothing he could do. And that's the biggest fallacy, because people watching it and they go, well, that doesn't feel that way. Because you even see people's responses saying, no, it's a fold here. Like, they intuitively know it's a fold. They don't have to have experience of Alex Foxen or some super pro. They just know it's a fold, because they know in this situation, this specifically, when they face the situation in live poker, that's going to be the nuts or near nuts every time. So they intuitively know this. However, they're being told that, no, Foxen made a good decision. And ultimately, even though it didn't work out, this is one of those neutral decisions that you just sort of toss up in the air and hope it works out.
Yeah, notice, like you're saying, the top-down strategy talking heads, even the commentators in the moment, are saying, like, how does Foxen get away from this?
There are no answers given. The conversation is convoluted. It's all over the place, and ultimately gives the people watching, the players or the people that are passionate about poker, more questions than answers. It leaves them puzzled. Like, well, if Alex Foxen doesn't know what to do and does decision that feels wrong, however, everybody's saying that it's still very justifiable and rational and ultimately not a bad decision or choice, then what do I do? And I'm just playing small stakes tournaments, small stakes cash games, and I'm faced with these type of situations? Am I just supposed to close my eyes, toss a coin in my mind, and just hope it lands in the right place? Is that ultimately what poker is about? Is that the edge we have? And I feel this is where poker strategy in general is way off in terms of effectiveness and in terms of actually what's possible and available for every single poker player today.
Okay, so let's go a little bit deeper. So what was actually, from your perspective, happening with Foxen in the hand, and how did he kind of get off track?
Let's start a little bit earlier. Foxen had a very effective strategy against him. He basically figured out that he was not calling down enough at all. In fact, he was way overfolding. And this isn't just something that Foxen figured out. Even casual observers were saying he's overfolding. So basically, in a heads-up match, he was calling down with the very top of his range. And even the top of his range, he ended up folding. I think in the hand against a maybe different player, he folded trips with queen kicker to like a single raise, which is unfathomable in that spot.
So he's basically saying, I'm okay making small mistakes, but I'm not going to make a big mistake.
Yeah, so Cthulhu's whole plan is, I'm not here to just close my eyes and call you down. Even though people think I'm a whale, I have so much money, that's not my purpose. My purpose is, when you barreling, I'm going to give you credit. However, when I have a big hand, I'm going to play it quirky and in a unique way where I know you can't fold to me.
That's basic strategy for a lot of players out there.
Absolutely. A player of every stakes and every level, how many times you play with a guy at table who is quirky all over the place and does all these strange strategies when he has a big hand? In a spot where you would never do that. In fact, almost nobody else at the table would do that, but he's doing that. Mm-hmm. He's checking back the nuts on the wet board. He's checking back a hand that should need protection. But he doesn't care because he's like, this is how I play. I play quirky. I don't care about the strategy because he's not attached or tied to a strategy base like you are, like a regulars or a player who's prides himself on learning all the strategy and implementing it. Mm-hmm. This guy just does impulsively what feels right to him. So for him to trap, even though it might not make sense to you, makes all the sense in the world to him.
Yeah, and we'll get into a little more on intuition later. But what I'm hearing is that these players, unlike regs, are more intuitive based. Like intuitively, I'm going to do this or this and be more playful and quirky in my strategy. Whereas a reg has created these defined boundaries of like, this is what I do because this works for me and this is what I trust. And if I veer off this, then that's how I lose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, either intuitively based, meaning they come from a deeper place of sensing that this is the right play, or more likely they're impulsive, meaning they're reacting in the moment to what in that moment feels right. Mm. So you will see a player check back top set on a really wet board instantly. And you can make assumptions, while nobody would check back instantly top set in this board. That doesn't make sense. Mm-hmm. Guess what? This player is impulsive, meaning he had that feeling or thought come in, like, oh, check it here. Trap him. Disguise your hand. And he just did it. Mm-hmm. Because he is not a professional. He's not somebody who's abiding by your rules or your strategies.
And so this is where this Foxen hand is a microcosm of a much larger issue with poker strategy, is that we expect other people to act how we would act. And then we create generalizations and distortions of the information in the moment by saying, well, because he snap checked back on a wet board, he can never have these hands. And then we base our entire strategy for that hand, our entire decision on that one piece of information. And we totally zoom in our focus.
Yeah, it's a logical fallacy. We're expecting him to act not just the way we would act, but the way we expect him to act. So basically, we're assigning to him certain traits and abilities which he might have or might not have, however we assume on his behalf. And when he does something outside of that, our assumptions, which is nothing more than a thought and idea in our minds, then we acting from a logical fallacy, which means everything else that comes from it is already wrong. Mm-hmm. Because it's a fallacy. It's not real. The foundation doesn't exist. because he's doing what he feels like doing in the moment, not what you think he should be doing or what you expect him to do. And that's a huge, huge red flag for a lot of regs and even good pros, because of their inability to see outside of dimensions of their own narrow comfort zone of what they expect people to be and how they expect them to act at the table in terms of poker strategy.
So apply that to Foxen here. What was going on with Foxen?
So Foxen did not understand Katola fully as a player coming in here. He understood that he was overfolding. However, he started applying certain strategies on the other side to him that have never materialized, meaning like, oh, he's pretty standard, which he's not. Katola is not standard, right? Because just because he's standard was overfolding, and then like, oh, he's a standard overfolding guy, he wasn't standard on the value side of the strategy. There, he was all over the place. He was quirky, he was trappy, he was doing things that aren't typical or standard for any reg. So what happened with Foxen is, one, his assumption about who he is as a player or how he's supposed to play cloud his judgment on actually who Alex Katola is. And that's what led down the rabbit hole domino effect of making that decision that ultimately cost him all his money.
Got it.
What he created out of it is basically ability. Yes, he assigned ability to Katola that Katola did not have. At least he hasn't proven yet in all of his heads-up matches, which is, I'm going to blast off on the river for 4.5, 5 million on top of a big bet with air or with a hand I'm turning to bluff. He's shown bluffs on the river, but they were all sized in a way where even if he loses that, it's okay. In this spot, if he gets called and he's bluffing, he's basically done. He's crippled and he's going to be out within the next 5 hands. So for all intents and purposes, that's an all-in. So what Foxen assigned to Katola here is, one, he's capable of doing that as a bluff for this amount, which he hasn't shown any ability to do so before, during, or after. And two, he assigned to him a range, basically such a polarized range, where, okay, it has to be either boats or a hand is turned to a bluff that I could beat.
Yeah. And this is where even Polk contradicted himself, because okay, this is a great check back. And then at the end, he was basically saying like, well, he only has boats here, instead of why can't he have bigger flushes?
Yeah. Because the idea, the commentator spoke into that as well, is that Katola is not capable of, let's say, jamming there with a nut flush or jamming there with a second flush, which is ridiculous in itself. One, because Katola is the original raiser
On the button.
on the button, and Foxen just flatted, which means Foxen has almost no boats in his range
So
there.
Foxen has the more capped range.
Yeah, severely capped. Foxen has no ace-king, obviously no kings, no jacks, no aces, no eights, maybe eights once in a blue, even though Foxen was playing very aggressive, so we would expect him to 3-bet that. So basically the only boat that Foxen has in that spot is king 8.
And maybe even 3-bet some king 8 suiteds.
Yeah.
So
Or even king 8 offsuit, which he was aggressively attacking him. So Foxen's range there is severely capped. So the idea that Katola can only do that with boats there is also likely a logical fallacy, because Katola is smart enough to figure out, if I have a nut flush here, I am beating him every time. If I have a second flush here, I'm likely beating him every time.
yeah, he's a undisciplined and impulsive player, but that doesn't mean he's an idiot.
Yeah. He did a similar move, slightly smaller amount, where he donk jammed river against Jungleman with ace jack, which was 2 pair on a pretty wet board, in a spot where he could be beat, obviously, but he jammed there knowing that likely he has Jungleman beat, and there's hands that Jungleman could call him with that he beats. So he's already shown that he is capable of blasting off for medium thick value rather than just polarized range of like nuts or nothing. Yeah, this is right. This is regs of somebody like professionals applying their idea of what poker is or what strategy is. like this is polarized jam. Like it's either nuts or near nuts or it's a bluff.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something, and by the way, notice how often you play against players at a table where you see that, where they take top and they blast off with it. And yeah, maybe in your mind, it's, well, that doesn't make sense. You basically, are you kind of turning it into a bluff here? Are you bluffing here? Right? They don't know that they're merging or even know what that means. They just know, hey, I'm not sure what to do here. I think I have the best hand. I think I might not. And I'm not comfortable calling, but I'm very comfortable blasting off.
Yeah, maybe it's not logical in their head. It could just be excitement or fear or some other emotion that's coming through that's having them just like they can't even. I mean, I play through that a lot of times where I just have so much going on and the emotions are taking charge and I don't even realize it until after. So this is, a big piece of this hand is that we expect players in poker to act logically, and that's the whole basis of solvers and ranges and this whole static copycat strategy thing is that we expect poker players to act like humans and they're not human, or we expect them to act like robots, but they're humans.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's ultimately where strategy is going to fall short. The static strategy that most try to apply, GTO or some combination of, vacuum strategy of just applying like this is what should work, this is what it should be. You're not accounting for the human factor, which is basically the biggest factor of it all. You're playing against people that are emotional beings. Even if you're playing against regs, they're still emotional beings. If you're playing against somebody who doesn't have a strong strategic foundation or not attached to having some sort of strategic foundation to just sort of react impulsively based on how they feel in the moment, then all you're doing is you're closing your eyes and throwing darts in the dark.
Yeah, I can even tell you from playing at all levels, even playing high stakes, is even the best players, and I play with some great players, when you have someone that sits at the game that's drunk or that treats money differently than you do or makes impulsive or outside the box decisions, all your preparation, all the fact that like however good you are, all the hands you play or whatever, it just goes completely out the window. And I've seen very good players just be completely lost in situations like that because they're like, well, my strategy doesn't account for this. What do I do now?
Yeah, and let's take it further. It's not just players that are all over the place in terms of how they're coming in mentally, emotionally, being very impulsive. It could be a player that knowingly will take advantage of that. Think of Keating. Mm-hmm. Is a perfect example, right? He comes in, his reputation is wild maniac, super bluffer, super capable, and notice how he uses it. You could say firsthand, he's literally stacking people left and right, knowing exactly what range he's up against. In fact, knowing almost exact hand he's up against, and knowing like, okay, if I overbet jam here 2x pot, 2.5x pot, I'm getting called.
Yep. I still think he's going to lean towards letting this go. But the only reason he still has those cards in his hand is because it's Alan.
I know what to do against every single player.
Love that. Love it.
Truth. Bullets, yeah.
How do you not have a flush draw?
Yeah, there you go. Well, how do you not have a flush draw?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny you bring him up because that's what I was thinking of without remembering the name. But we played the other day. He came in late night session and he was he wasn't drunk, but he was there to have fun. And he sat down with, whatever, I don't know. I think he only sat down with 20. But he sat down and not too long after, he played 3 hands and all the regs in the game got in bad versus him. Mm-hmm. One of them, he got in with nut flush draw and someone else had a lower flush draw and she ended up hitting a pair. So she got lucky. He rebought and then it was a single raise pot where it went like raise, call, and Keating called. It came king, 5 deuce. The pre-flop raiser C-bet and then Keating jammed 25K and he called off and Keating had bottom 2 versus king queen. And it just you could just see when a player sits down that doesn't operate in the conventional comfort zone, then everybody goes well, and what happened with Foxen here? I got to call off here because this is what my strategy tells me to do. And if I don't, and we're going to get to the question here,
learning from people that tell you like this is a strategy you have to follow. However, then applying it doesn't work exactly for the reasons we just said. Because if somebody is operating outside of the boundaries of your strategy, of your system, you are in trouble because they're capable of doing things and know how you will react. Keating is a really good example, but there's plenty of players that are crushing stakes that literally are there to crush regs or the idea of what strategy is supposed to be like. An example, Keating, he's not check jamming 5x, 6x, 7x pot there without a hand that beats you. Because he understands that if he has ace king on a, say, king high board, or he's up against aces and he has bottom two, that person's never folding. So what's the point of just playing small and where you're not going to make money anyway against a hand like queens, jacks, or whatever? Just attack the top of the range, knowing that this reg will never fold to Keating. No, because Keating has a reputation for being wild maniac. And if you're folding top of your range to Keating, then what are you doing here? Right? Sounds smart. However, it's not, because if Keating knows this, he's going to take all your money every time. And you're going to think you're doing the right thing and you just got unlucky. Or that it's a variance and you're just running back. No, Keating knows exactly what your mindset is, exactly what you're doing, how you think of him, and he's exploiting you. And guess what? A lot of casuals or people that you think are wild players and maniacs, a lot of them will know this even without consciously realizing, meaning on an unconscious level, they'll know what to do against you because they know where your comfort zone begins and ends. And that's ultimately why static strategy doesn't work. And when you're faced with weird situations outside of his comfort zone, you're left with, what Doug Polk is left with when he has aces and he just does a coin flip to decide what to do.
If this lands on all in, this is going to be the worst. Okay, ready? Here we go. Here we go. Here we go.
Watch.
So for the viewers, as we talked about, basically, the talking heads are not giving them a clear, concrete, simple, effective way to make a decision in the moment. So what is the most effective way?
Well, the most effective way is basically understanding yourself and how you operate at the highest level, and then connecting to the player, or just basically establishing a baseline of understanding the player in the moment, how he feels, how he wants to portray that he feels, and ultimately acknowledging what is our resistance or what is my resistance in the moment and making his decision.
And the question that we use in that moment is, what is the most painful outcome I'm avoiding right now? So in Foxen's case, right, when Monarch jams 4.5 million on the river, there's one of two options. It's either, well, if I fold here and he somehow shows me like a bluff, like a trip kings or something like that, and I fold the best hand here, that would be so, like, getting outplayed is the biggest fear in that moment. Or is the fear like, yeah, that I call and I lose this money? And whatever outcome you're resisting the most, whichever one you're like, I really don't want to happen, which in Fox's case, we can see like him folding here and risking getting outplayed by Monarch would have been terrifying.
Yeah, because it would be more than just being outplayed. It would literally collapse his entire strategic system. Because, right, he went based on his initial assumption, which was this very deeply fundamental strategic assumption that I don't expect him to ever check back here with monster hands, like 2 pair or better.
Mm-hmm.
Check.
He's checked back. Oh my. Discipline.
So if he does that, if he doesn't follow that, then his entire strategic understanding of poker then collapses. Mm-hmm. Then who is he? Then he's not Alex Foxen anymore, aka identity. I'm this amazing tournament poker player. I'm just some dude making random decisions that go against everything I built, everything I created, everything I learned over my entire poker career. Mm-hmm. So it's a much bigger thing, which is why a lot of regs will make mistakes, which they don't realize mistake. They don't even qualify the mistakes because they're like, that's part of the game. Not realizing that they're basically doing something based on their identity or what they believe themselves to be, what they think they have to be, rather than what is being called for in that moment, which is reading and reacting in the moment to exactly what's happening in that moment.
Stay tuned for part 2, how to make bullseye decisions in the moment and where we'll break down the behavioral cues that Foxen clearly missed in the moment. Thank you for watching. Remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe for more.